In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Do you want the whole truth?
I don't think you're ready.
Governments don't control things. A government can't control the economy without controlling people.
It's Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth.
Well, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. We're really glad you're here, right here on the AFR Talk Network. I'm Crane Durham. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. Big show for you tonight, and we've switched some things up for this special Thursday edition of Nothing But Truth. And we begin tonight with Beat the Press, which features the real Woodward, Chris Woodward, business and environmental reporter for American Family News, onenewsnow.com. His Twitter is at AFNC Woodward. And he joins us normally on Friday, but we have a very special guest tomorrow during this time, right now, to Beat the Press, where we expose some of the media bias and ask just simple questions. What would Woodward do? How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. I will give a disclaimer that you have to go to work tomorrow if you're listening and you do work on Fridays. This is not Friday's edition of Beat the Press.
Thank you. I think that is always a good reminder. So tell me, Chris, when the budget deal is reached and you have Paul Ryan come out, do a pretty good interview with Greta Van Susteren defending it, goes back and forth, but then you get reports of John Boehner, House Speaker, ripping critics of the bill. And here's just the first example, and this happened Wednesday. Roll it.
You mean the groups that came out and opposed it before they ever saw it?
Those groups. Are you worried that
They're using our members and they're using the American people for their own goals. This is ridiculous.
Casey, Boehner have some fire in his Cheerios today. He is not happy about that.
That's a pretty aggressive stand from House Speaker John Boehner. These groups have caused him interminable problems over the last couple of years as he's tried to govern. We saw it with the last government shutdown fight. So what you're seeing here is Boehner really standing up there, and he's defending this budget deal that they've agreed on.
Now we get a little more from CBS News when it comes to the budget deal and the presentation. Notice that was the first salvo, if you will, fired in this split, between the critics of the budget proposed and the establishment Republicans who are supporting it. And this is within the Republican Party. So then we get a CBS News report, and Nancy Cordes gives us how this bill is a compromise that may not please the extreme wings of the party. Roll it.
This is a true compromise, the kind we don't see in Congress very often. And the reason it's so important is that it could bring an end to this terrible cycle where Congress can't agree on a yearly budget. And so they fund the government in fits and starts, setting up showdowns every few months. The deal sets government funding levels at just over $1 trillion for 2014 and 2015, right between what Democrats and Republicans wanted. And it partially rolls back those deep across-the-board spending cuts known as sequestration. The agreement won't win support from some conservatives who think sequestration cuts should be bolstered, not replaced. Florida's Marco Rubio blasted the deal, saying, quote, "This budget continues Washington's irresponsible budgeting decisions by spending more money than the government takes in." Ryan will be briefing the entire House Republican conference on this deal later this morning. There are bound to be some conservatives who don't like it. They will want more cuts, but he says in the end he feels that he will get healthy support. And already, Nora and Charlie, many Senate Democrats are weighing in to say they don't think the deal's perfect, but they can live with it.
Interesting how she couched the Republicans' inner battles versus the Democrats' inner battles. Your thoughts on the presentation of the budget deal?
As far as the two stories goes?
The two stories go, and specifically the idea of compromise and describing the sequester cuts as deep.
Right.
Go ahead.
I will say the more recent clip that you played, I thought was the better of the two. At least they had Rubio's thoughts mixed in with the whole comments and explainer of this being a compromise. Maybe by its definition, it was a compromise. People that were in the talks trying to come up with something did compromise and come up with something. That's not the issue, however, in so much as it is what Republicans agreed to as part of that compromise. And certainly there are a number of conservative groups. I'm in the process of interviewing several of them. We've got stories coming out featuring some of the very groups that Speaker Boehner was very critical of. And I will say some of those groups have been very supportive of him in recent elections.
And you will be covering that and bringing us the perspective, but look at what has become the story.
Yeah.
And that is?
Well, what has become the story pretty much at this point is a lot of the groups that are very upset with what has been agreed to as far as what the people on the right have agreed to. Brent Bozell of the Media Research Center was just on last hour with Tony Perkins on Washington Watch. And Brent says, what did they agree to? They agreed to go against their word, talking about Republicans. Mr. Bozell said, quote, "They said in the Budget Control Act of 2011 they would not do this. They have given us, in what is a $17 trillion debt, they have given us a budget that's going to reduce the deficit by $25 billion, that's billion with a B, over the next 10 years. And Bozell says, quote, "It makes a mockery of the term fiscal responsibility."
And that is the story, and the lead is conservative split on budget.
Right.
And the idea of this budget, and we're going to talk more about this next hour with David Ferdoso of the Washington Examiner and the Conservative Intelligence Briefing, and has written 3 books on President Obama, for the record, just to give you the perspective of where he's coming from. But bottom line, as you're detailing here, the story is the split with Republicans within their party.
Definitely.
And as I described this was a political deal. This was about trying to keep the focus on Obamacare, because at the margins, as we look at overall spending, they didn't deal with entitlements. They've raised fees. That's taxes. Right. I mean, I wouldn't vote for it, but bottom line, why would, in your estimation, as you're covering this, and you realize that there is a built-in narrative that the Republican Party is split, and all the left has been trying to do is trying to take out the Tea Party because they did the most damage to them in Congress in 2010. Why on earth would Boehner pick this fight?
I can't answer that question. I'm not in Boehner's mind, but a number of people, not all of them radio personalities, have said that it's basically all because of what's going down in November of next year, that being an election. And, Dan Celia even said yesterday that what was agreed to this week was basically a win for politicians. And even if the talking points are, well, this gets the focus back on Obamacare, Dan said yesterday that, if they drop the ball, that's on their hands anyway. The focus should still be on Obamacare, so they can't spin it in that regard.
And it's not an either or, so to speak. And Dan the man, always providing excellent analysis.
Dan completely tore into Republicans yesterday.
Yeah.
So it was not, Democrats are going to get where they're wanting to. I mean, Dan aired his thoughts, so to speak, on his opinion. And
as he will do it. And that's what, again, Dan looks at numbers, looks at it, what I do day in and day out, at least attempt to do, is the R's and D's is not about that. It's about actual spending.
Right.
But Dan has extraordinary breadth of knowledge on being able, not only that, he's able to communicate it and break down the numbers. And I specifically did not listen or read what Dan wrote because I was afraid I was just going to repeat it. And that happens when you get somebody who really is good at what they do. And we are really blessed to have him. Financial Issues heard here daily. And the reason we point this out is also for you all to lock AFR in, not only because Chris Woodward, business and environment reporter for OneNewsNow.com, American Family News, OneNewsNow.com, but also to know there are tremendous resources, different points of view on the line.
Sure.
And what oftentimes is said about not only commentators like myself, but also in news analysis and journalists is that, you all are in the tank for a particular party.
Sure.
And we're demonstrating,
I've
you've
been
demonstrated
that a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
I tell people, I don't care what letter is after your name. My job is to tell you what other people are doing with your money.
Chris will tell you exactly what he thinks without bias. And I got to tell you, sometimes it hurts. But we'll keep moving. We go now to Ed Henry having a discussion yesterday with Deputy Press Secretary Josh Earnest, in which he says to Josh, I love this question, by the way, because he's saying he's taking up for another question that was asked about the numbers specifically. And he's saying, hey, the signups, will they be, quote, in a position to get insurance? Will the signups be in a position? Will they get the insurance? And Josh Earnest, well, he responded, roll it.
If anyone signs up by December 23rd, they will be, quote, in a position to get insurance. But his question was, are you guaranteeing that they will get it? Not that they'll be in a position to get it, but if you sign up by December 23rd, are you guaranteeing you'll have insurance on January 1?
That is the deadline that we have established for individuals, that if people who sign up on December 23rd, that's what they need to do in order to qualify for insurance coverage by January 1st. We have individuals who are, we have a team of experts, actually, more than just individuals, these are experts, who are in place to make sure that the proper linkages are connected between the insurance companies and the individuals who are enrolled.
Trying, but you can't guarantee it.
We are confident that by December 23rd, we'll have ironed out these problems. And Mr. Zients himself has said that we are confident that past and future 832 issues will be resolved.
Now, we've been talking about this story for some time since last week, as it was brought out in the Kelly file, as well as you all talking about what happens. They don't know if they're signed up. They don't know what kind of payment to make because the process is nuts.
Right.
Your thoughts on not only the question, but the answer?
I think the question, it's okay. I mean, he's trying to get him to guarantee him. He's as far as the answer goes, he's giving him, I think, the best answer he can give him, but certainly some issues to point out there, and I haven't seen that entire press conference. I don't know if they followed up on this, but he says we've brought in experts, and they feel that if this is done by this and all that other stuff, there were experts that were brought in to create healthcare.gov, and we've seen how that's gone. So for anybody to say there have been experts that have said this, take it with a grain of salt, folks. I can only tell you that.
And that's interesting because as we, again, cover these stories, me, a commentator, a lot easier, elements of journalism. You're a journalist. You're going to the story, the 5 W's of H, boom, bring it to me. And yet when you have someone, a record of being dishonest, saying things that are not true, or making a statement that turns out to say experts, as you just mentioned, do you think that's bias? Or is that just giving people the full perspective? Because I would want that, whether it's a liberal, conservative administration, period. I think it serves us. I think it is journalism. Right. Your thoughts?
My next question would have been, and again, I didn't see the entire press conference, and maybe this was touched on.
Sure.
Who are the experts? What gives them the right to be called an expert? What says that by December? Why do you say sign up by December 15th, but you say by December 23rd we expect to have all these kinks out? What if the kinks aren't out by December 15th? What does that mean for January 1st? Let me tell you, there's a lot of people that, for whatever reason, have no choice but to get involved in the exchanges, federal or state, depending on their situation, or maybe they have to get Medicaid, and they do not know what's going on just because there is so much stuff up in the air.
And a lot of this is we're learning stuff day in and day out. A lot of this we talked about, but some we could not talk about. And then we have the idea that they knew about this. They knew it was going to happen.
Right.
And so that's another aspect of this, to say, okay, well, if they knew this was going to happen, how can we believe them now? And that's for people to make a decision on the information they have. On the flip side, yes, Woodward is sticking with us. He's gracing us with his presence, and we are blessed because of it. I want to ask you about the selfie and the selfie defense of President Obama. Also, climate change, debate, and smackdown, epic proportions. Mark Morano, someone that you have featured in your broadcast as a source.
Sure.
Get your thoughts on that. Much more with Chris Woodward, Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. This is Woodward's Beat the Press, or Beats the Press, and we'll do more of it on the flip side. AFR Talk.